This is a breakdown of the third episode of Breaking Bad, and The Bags in the River, which continues the previous episode's title. Keep track of how many of the 17 details you already knew, and leave a comment with your number. We start with the second magic under the surface shot in Breaking Bad, as Jesse and Walt clean up the bathtub aftermath. Notice that Walt's using a different kind of mask, since one of the heavy-duty gas masks was left in the desert. The human remains make Walt think about his days as a graduate student with Gretchen, his lab partner, when they tried to break down all the chemicals in a human body. This is the only time I'm aware of digital de-aging being used in the Breaking Bad universe. You could argue that Better Call Saul should have done this, although the effect here is kind of cheesy and inconsistent.
The whole thing adds up to 99.888042%.
The weird thing is that when I add up the numbers on the board, I get a higher number, and that doesn't include potassium. But anyway, it doesn't equal 100% due to rounding errors caused by them adding numbers with varying precision. I think Walt and Gretchen should have known better. Skylar decides to paint Holly's room herself while standing on a stepladder, and this is notable because in the pilot she says,
I really need you to paint at some point. I mean, the sooner that back bedroom gets finished, then... And I do it myself, except you said you don't want me standing on the stepladders.
I will paint.
This is the first time Hank and Marie's last name is revealed. Based on the press release for the pilot, it looks like their last name was originally supposed to be Weld. Skylar tries to figure out if Walt's mood changes are due to pot, but Marie misinterprets it as Skylar thinking Walt Jr. is smoking it.
Walter Jr.'s on pot?
What? No. No!
The cleaning continues with a nod to Pulp Fiction.
Better you than me, gentlemen.
While Jesse smokes meth on the upstairs toilet, Walt cleans up after Krazy-8 with the basement toilet. Like the last episode, this is directed by Gretchen's real-life husband, so it's fitting that this episode introduces Gretchen.
A partner of yours? He's got a big mouth.
Krazy-8 starts playing mind games with Walt. He knows that his only hope is to convince Walt to let him go without Jesse knowing, who would never go for that.
Your real problem's sitting upstairs.
You told him my name. That's who, him? My name, where I work. You told him about my son. Don't touch me!
There's a continuity error here, as the floor goes from being clear to having stuff all over it, back to being clear again. This is the first time Jesse says,
Bitch.
Although in the previous episode he did say,
Biatch.
Do you have these in black?
Are those purple shoes and she'd rather have black? What is going on?
Walter Jr. Marijuana.
Marie wants Hank to scare Walt Jr. away from pot because unlike his dad,
He respects you.
and triggered by the way she was treated by the saleswoman, we see Marie shoplifting for the first time. At the Crossroads Motel, Hank exploits Wendy to warn Walt Jr. about the dangers of drugs.
Show us your teeth.
Filming was actually interrupted when a random person attempted to pick up the actress, mistaking her for a real prostitute. We find out that Jesse's hiding out there.
Who the hell was that?
Copping some football player messing with me.
Back at Jesse's house, Walt makes a classic pros versus cons list for killing Krazy-8, and the single pro seems to outweigh everything else. He calls Skylar to give an excuse for not being home, but she's on to him.
You're at the car wash.
Yeah.
I seriously doubt that. Since you quit 2 weeks ago. Wherever you are, why don't you just stay there tonight?
Walt makes Krazy-8 another sandwich. From this point forward, for the rest of the series, Walt removes the crust anytime he makes a sandwich. Just like in the pilot, Walt faints again. You can see that the plate really only breaks into 4 pieces, all out of Krazy-8's reach. And isn't that sound effect a little much? Walt regains consciousness about 15 minutes later, which starts an uncharacteristically long scene.
I've got lung cancer.
Krazy-8 is the first person Walt has told.
There's no poison. That'd be the way to do it. You being a chemist and all.
It is pretty surprising Walt didn't do that. Maybe this gives him the idea for the next season, though. Krazy-8 successfully bonds with Walt and convinces him to let him go. You can see the trust growing as Walt hands him a beer rather than rolling it to him. When Walt goes up to get the key for the bike lock, he thinks about that broken plate and double checks that all the pieces are there. Indeed, they are not, and he knows what he must do.
No, don't do this. Don't do this. Why are you doing this? Unlock me, Walter.
Walt really wants to make sure he's right about that plate before actually going through with it. He sees Krazy-8 reach for his pocket, and then he does one final test.
The moment I do, are you gonna stick me with that broken piece of plate?
The next day, Jesse returns to find Krazy-8 and Walt gone and everything cleaned up. We do get confirmation in a later episode that Walt dissolved him, as Jesse mentions,
"Two dudes that turned into raspberry slush and flushed down my toilet."
I was confused by the cymatic sign on Walt's high school, but this is a term for the combination of science, math, and chemistry, although I've never heard of this before.
I understand that Mr. White is feeling a little under the weather this morning.
This must have been because he was up all night dealing with the body. We learn that Krazy-8 is the DEA informant. Look how Hank transfers the evidence from his gloved hand to his ungloved hand. Probably not a smart move. We end with Walt continuing to think about Gretchen.
Something's missing.
What about the soul?
There's nothing but chemistry here.
What a line. And then we get a mini cliffhanger.
There's something I have to tell you.
Shout out to my channel members, including 2 new members, Gabe and Doof Troop. 1 more and I can highlight the list of members on the channel page. And I'm still looking for suggestions for another custom emoji for members to use in comments. Thanks again everyone, and I'll see you next time.